The United States seized an oil tanker flying the Russian flag in the Atlantic Ocean that was linked to Venezuela. Reuters reports this. According to media reports, the U.S. Coast Guard and armed forces took control of the Russian tanker Mariner 1 after more than 2 weeks of pursuit. American forces began pursuing the tanker in mid-December, when the vessel, which was en route from Iran to Venezuela, changed course to avoid being seized by the U.S. Coast Guard. U.S. authorities believed that the vessel had violated the blockade of Venezuela declared by Donald Trump. After that, the crew of the tanker painted a Russian flag on its hull and announced that the vessel was under Russian protection. Then the tanker was officially entered into the Russian ship registry, after which Moscow sent a diplomatic note to Washington demanding that the pursuit of the tanker be stopped. According to the agency, amid the operation, Russia sent a submarine and other Navy ships to the North Atlantic, stating that they were being deployed to escort the vessel. The Russian Foreign Ministry confirmed that they are monitoring the situation surrounding the seized tanker. At the same time, as Reuters notes, Russian warships and a submarine were in close proximity to the tanker at the moment of its seizure, but did not take any active measures. According to monitoring channels, British forces were also involved in the seizure of the Russian tanker. A tanker aircraft, U.S. Air Force P-8 Alpha Poseidon patrol planes, the British Poseidon MRA-1, and several American special-purpose aircraft are involved in the operation area. Propagandists have already responded to the seizure of the Russian tanker. Some bloggers claim that the vessel was supposedly empty and that the fleet was sent for some kind of interesting chess game. Others are wondering whether Moscow will respond. The European Command of the U.S. Armed Forces has confirmed the detention of the Russian oil tanker Mariner in the Atlantic Ocean. The agency has released footage from the scene of the vessel's detention. The Russian oil tanker Mariner was detained for violating American sanctions, according to a statement from the European Command of the U.S. Armed Forces. Currently, according to monitoring services, the vessel is located approximately 200 kilometers south of Iceland. It has also been reported that the U.S. has seized another tanker, Sophia, in the waters of the Caribbean Sea, according to the U.S. Army Southern Command.
Large-scale anti-government protests continue in Iran, which began at the end of December due to the state of the Iranian economy and rising prices. According to media reports, protesters have taken control of the entire city of Abdanan in Ilam province, and security forces have laid down their arms and joined their side. Anti-government demonstrations and protests have spread to more than 50 cities and towns across the country, including regions that were previously considered loyal to the Iranian leadership. At the same time, violent clashes between protesters and police are taking place in other regions. The Iranian authorities are unsuccessfully trying to suppress the protests by force. For example, on January 6th, clashes broke out between security forces and protesters at Tehran's Grand Bazaar. And in the Malek Shahi district, security forces opened fire on a protest in front of government buildings. Radio Free Europe reports on the aftermath of the incident, citing a local resident.
Several innocent people were killed, mostly young people. The number of wounded was very high.
According to human rights activists, at least 36 people were killed during the protests. More than 1,200 protesters were arrested by security forces. Earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump responded to the Iranian authorities' attempts to suppress the protests and threatened retaliation. On his social media, he stated,
"If Iran shoots and brutally kills peaceful protesters, as it usually does, the United States of America will come to their aid. We are ready to take action."
Iranian protesters are insisting on changes in the country's leadership, which threatens the fall of the Iranian regime.
Putin spent Christmas at a secret military base surrounded by GRU officers. For the third year in a row, the dictator is celebrating the holidays in the company of the military. However, this time, unlike the previous 2 years, the Kremlin did not name the church where the president attended the holiday service. According to information from the publication Agentstvo, the church is located on the grounds of a GRU military unit in the Moscow region. Standing closest to the president among the military was the commander of the unit, Alexei Galkin, who was awarded the title Hero of Russia during the Second Chechen War. Kremlin pool journalist Alexander Yunashov reported before the Christmas service that Putin would spend the holiday surrounded by participants of the so-called special military operation. Covering this event will not be easy because among the participants there will be those who cannot be shown publicly. According to an analysis by the publication Agentstvo, the president of the Russian Federation spent Christmas at the Church of the Great Martyr George the Victorious, located on the grounds of the Senezh Special Purpose Center, Military Unit 92554 in Solnekhnogorsk. According to the Pilgrim's Alphabet Project, in 2017, the idea to build a church here was approved by Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. As reported by the Telegram channel Kremlin Snuffbox, after information surfaced about an attack on Putin's residence in the Novgorod region, Alina Kabaeva allegedly asked Putin to relocate her and the children to another, more secure place. Kremlin Snuffbox, citing sources in the Federal Protective Service, FSO, writes, Putin did not make a decision about the relocation, making it clear that there may not be any more secure places for year-round residents in Russia. Except perhaps for bunkers, but those can hardly be considered comfortable, the channel claims. Let us recall that it was Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov who announced the attempted attack on the Novgorod region residents on December 29th. The statement was made against the backdrop of negotiations between Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump in the United States. The Russian leader also personally discussed this with the President of the United States during their conversation. At first, Trump was angered by the information about the attack on the residence, but a few days later he publicly stated that the United States did not believe the attack had actually taken place.
The administration of US President Donald Trump is demanding that Venezuela's interim government expel agents of Russia, China, Iran, and Cuba from the country. As reported by Axios, after the operation to capture Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro was completed, the White House began pressuring Venezuela, demanding the expulsion of all suspected spies and intelligence agents. This measure does not apply to official diplomats. In addition, according to ABC News, Venezuela must sever its economic ties with China, Russia, Iran, and Cuba, and agree to an exclusive partnership with the United States in oil extraction. According to a source cited by the publication, Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated at a closed briefing that the United States can force Venezuela to take these steps because its existing oil tankers are full. Rubio also informed lawmakers that according to U.S. estimates, Venezuela has only a few weeks left before the country faces financial insolvency unless it is able to sell its oil reserves. Meanwhile, the United States continues to pursue a Russian oil tanker in the Atlantic Ocean, which has been trying to evade capture for about 3 weeks. According to the Wall Street Journal, in response, Russia deployed a submarine and other warships to escort the tanker. According to the publication, the tanker was unable to enter Venezuelan ports to load oil. The U.S. Coast Guard began pursuing it as part of a large-scale campaign to detain the shadow fleet transporting illegal oil, particularly of Russian origin. In an attempt to evade pursuit, the tanker painted a Russian flag on its side, changed its registration and name, and claimed to belong to the Russian Federation. Earlier, the Russian government sent an official diplomatic request to the United States demanding that it stop pursuing the oil tanker. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, French President Emmanuel Macron, and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer have signed a declaration of intent to deploy troops in Ukraine after the end of the war. This became known during a press conference of European leaders following the meeting of the Coalition of the Willing in Paris. This is the first key step toward deploying a Western contingent in Ukraine. French leader Emmanuel Macron noted that mechanisms for monitoring the ceasefire in Ukraine were agreed upon at the summit. According to him, these will be provided by the United States with the participation of a number of countries that have expressed their willingness to join. In addition, Macron announced long-term support for the armed forces of Ukraine, which will remain the first line of defense.
Support for Ukraine? The size of the Ukrainian army after the ceasefire will be 800,000 people, and we are ready to provide all the means necessary for the Ukrainian forces to deter potential aggression.
Macron added that foreign forces from the coalition of willing countries will be deployed on land, in the air, and at sea to ensure compliance with the ceasefire. In turn, Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the signing of the declaration is a clear signal of the coalition of the willing's readiness to work towards real security.
With these documents, we are strengthening further legal work with the parliaments of these countries so that, at the moment when diplomacy succeeds after the war ends, we are fully prepared to deploy the forces of the coalition of the willing.
Zelensky also announced that the documents on security guarantees for Ukraine are ready and expressed hope that they will be signed in the near future.
Turkey is ready to contribute to providing maritime support for Ukraine's future security. This was stated by French President Emmanuel Macron at a press conference following the meeting of the leaders of the coalition of willing countries in Paris.
I would also like to welcome the proposal regarding the maritime dimension, voiced by Turkey. They are ready to take responsibility.
The President of France also noted that other countries, including Canada and Japan, are also playing a certain role in providing support. At the same time, the head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, Kyrylo Budanov, stated that there are already concrete results. He wrote about this on Telegram.
We are continuing important negotiations in Paris to achieve lasting peace and reliable security guarantees for our country. Not all information can be made public, but there are already concrete results. The work continues.
President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky said that representatives of Ukraine and the United States will discuss the most difficult issues in Paris on January 7th, in particular the territories and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant.
Ukraine is not hiding from the most difficult questions and will never be an obstacle to peace. Peace must be dignified, and this depends on our partners, whether they will ensure Russia's genuine willingness to end the war.
The country's leader noted that on January 7th he received the first report from Rustem Umerov about the work of the Ukrainian negotiating team in France. He added that another round of talks is expected with representatives of US President Donald Trump, which will be the third in 2 days. Volodymyr Zelensky also instructed the Ukrainian team to discuss possible formats for meetings at the leadership level between Ukraine and the countries of the EU and the USA. On January 6th, a meeting took place in Paris between Ukraine, the USA, and the coalition of willing countries. The parties confirmed their unity for a lasting peace and agreed on further support for Kyiv. Ukraine, France, and the United Kingdom signed a declaration on the creation of a joint coordination group. According to French President Emmanuel Macron, the new mechanism will allow for the full integration of the armed forces of the involved countries. In addition, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced the creation of military hubs in Ukraine after he confirmed the deployment of a British contingent to Ukrainian territory to ensure the future ceasefire regime.